Let's get straight into our big all-star panel for tonight. Sky News contributor Catherine Deves and Managing Director of Strategy and Policy at Agenda C, Parnell McGuiness, both join me here live on set tonight. So great to have you both here with us. Now, let's start with the biggest news of the day, the death of Cardinal George Pell in Rome. Parnell, I want us to start with you on this because I was reminded today of a column you wrote back in October for the Sydney Morning Herald. It was about the subject of atheism. And you said, you yourself are an atheist, but you talked about the importance of religion in society and what it can give to people. And I wanted to ask your response or reaction, I guess, to the news of the Cardinal's passing.
Well, of course, the news of anybody passing unexpectedly is always sad. And, I have a family connection to him, so I had met him a few times and I'm sad from that perspective. He was an intelligent man and a kind man in my experience. And so, of course, my immediate reaction was to be a bit sad about that. But, of course, on the bigger question of where he fitted into Australia and religion in Australia, it's quite an important sort of thing to consider is how we have moved from the kind of religiosity that Cardinal Pell represented to where we are now and what we might have lost along the way. As you say, I am an atheist. I am very fundamentally an atheist. Like if there is a God gene, I didn't get it.
Sure.
And yet, I can appreciate that religion has given us a lot in Western society. In fact, Joe Henrich, who is a sociologist and anthropologist, has written a very interesting book in which he argues that essentially it gave us the ability to function together as a society which has been scaled up and is able to respond in a civilised manner to one another. So the question is, without religion, do we still have that social glue? And if we don't, can we even replace that? Because that was a very sophisticated civilisational technology.
Indeed, and that book, The Weirdest People in the World, is fantastic, by Joseph Heinrich. I would recommend anybody looking for an interesting late summer read, have a look at that. But Catherine Deves, what was your reaction on the death of the Cardinal? And my bigger question, though, is to get to what Parnell was just talking about. It feels like in Australia in particular, in many corners of society, there's a real allergy to traditional religion, but I'm not sure that in many ways we aren't religious, just in different ways. What comes in to replace those traditional faiths?
Well, speaking as a lapsed Catholic, I was raised in the Catholic faith. My children are baptised Catholic. I acknowledge the passing of Cardinal Pell, who was the most senior Catholic in Australia. And the passing of anybody unexpectedly, as Parnell said, is sad, and we should respect those who are grieving his death. But with the sort of almost the collapse of religion in Australia, I think we had the least amount of people in the census identify as religious. We look at what's now filling that gap, because often religion, it gave people community, tradition, predictability. But now that has been lost, what is filling that void? And I look to things like, the climate extremism, gender identity, identitarianism, this sort of rise of narcissism. There's this void in people's lives, and I think it's being filled with things that are quite vacuous and actually quite detrimental.